It's me. It's me. Good afternoon. Hello. Thank you for coming along before lunch. I'll try and get through this quickly enough that you don't starve to death in the interim. I was told too late in the day yesterday that I'm supposed to be doing trends. I'd missed that bit off the description. So this is top tips for social media. We'll see how we go. First thing first on social media, before I get into the nuts of it, quite important. Which side are we on, Brad or Angelina? Which way are we going? Why is my Twitter feed full of this? Why are blokes that I row with and cycle with putting this stuff on Facebook? Why can't I get through Instagram this morning without reposts of screen grabs from Twitter? What is the matter with the social world? That's what we're here to find out, I guess, up to a level. For what it's worth, I'm on Angelina's side. I think Brad's been naughty. Right. Before I start, the reason I'm here and who I am. So I'm head of online for Monomax, which is the company that owns Squaremeal. And with Squaremeal, venues and events, restaurants and bars, Imbibe, and a thing called the Sommelier Wine Awards, we've got something like 120 or 130,000 social followers across our various channels. I'm responsible as head of online for everything that goes beep in the business and everything that goes well. Any poor experiences are down to my staff, nothing to do with me, so I'm very sorry about that. What I want to do is just to quickly top off how I'm going to talk, and we'll go through it from there. So, having discovered very late in the day that I'm supposed to be talking about trends, I looked at what I said last year. Was anybody unfortunate enough to be in my talk last year? Sorry, but well done for coming back, thanks. In the last year, there's been very little change in the social media landscape, which is very good for us now. If you're running a social account already or thinking about it, it's now, I think, a lot simpler. Social media basically has matured. Sorry, put my bottle down. Lots of challenges have come through, so you will probably all be Snapchatting and WhatsApping all over the place. But the big platforms, the aircraft carriers of Facebook and Instagram, are taking challenging ideas and pulling them into their platforms, which is quite an interesting thing to do. So an example of that would be how Instagram now enables a daily story in exactly the same way that Snapchat does. There are a few people who've disappeared, which I find quite interesting. A couple of years ago, all my mates were competing to be mayor of wherever it was on Foursquare and checking in like mad. Foursquare appears to have evaporated. I know the business still exists because we use their data at some levels, but I just don't see it anymore out in the wild amongst the normal community. So that's quite interesting that part of the mobile ecosystem's disappeared. But on the other side, what I have noticed, just with the launch of iOS 10 the other day on iPhone, is that the operating systems themselves are actually becoming social in many ways. I don't know if anyone's got iOS 10 on their, obviously on their iPhone, silly thing otherwise, but Messages in there has now got some Snapchatty features. You can scroll on top of pictures and so on, and that's quite an interesting thing to see Apple going, oh, right, this is how people are engaging with apps on our phone, so let's take that, build it into the native infrastructure. So that's been great to see. Video, which last year was going to be, it will be the big thing, I confidently predicted, is, thank God, the big thing. And that's because it's now so easy to film video and broadcast it on the go. I don't know if any of you have ever used Facebook Live video or created it yourselves. We did some this morning. So Damien, who's our editor for venues and events, we had him downstairs, did a quick piece to camera about the show, got that out. Did take 4 takes apparently, but still we did it. We got it out there, which was really good. No film crews required. We're seeing that a lot. I'm seeing in some sectors of the events industry that being a really big thing. I've got mates who are in the music industry, and what they're often doing is they're streaming parts of their concerts live. And what they're then doing is they're taking the rest of the video and they're putting it behind a paywall somewhere else. And they're saying that's making them significant amounts of money. And I'm not talking about massive bands you'll have heard of. I'm talking about fantastic folk bands. If anyone wants to know about that later, come find me or follow me on that Instagram stuff. The wonderful thing about video, however, is that it's very easy to grab someone's attention with it. It's much easier for that to work than any other kind of content. Obviously, if you're going to do video, if you want it to be very responsive, you put some cats in it, that will double any response you're expecting. If you put dogs and cats in it, that will treble the response. I can sit here and watch this for the next 15 minutes. We don't have to do the other 10 slides if you don't want to. It's up to you. So we'll move on. That was the most shared thing amongst my group. I'm 50 next year, by the way, so you think about my peer group on social. This was the most shared thing for 2 days across 3 of the platforms I use, which was quite worrying. And my teenage son was going, God, you're so sad, Dad. Right, so we all know that social numbers are absolutely phenomenal. I found this slide, which was recently updated. This is brilliant. So it's the world's population broken down in interesting ways. So when this was done, which I think was March this year, world population, call it 7.4 billion, of whom 46% have access to the internet. OMG. Of the total 7.4 million, 2.3 billion use social media. Right, start thinking about this in terms of the size of countries. You get down to the end there, this is active mobile social users. So those are people who are using some kind of mobile device, mainly a phone, but could be a tablet, to engage with social media. 27% of the world's population use social media. So this is the figure I found yesterday. If Facebook was a country, it would be the biggest. Okay, so it's ahead of China. Any guesses as to where Twitter comes in the countries of the world? Let's not do that. It goes China, India, USA, Twitter, then Germany. So these numbers, like they're mind-boggling. And then it goes even further, talking about video. Oh, I've put this blue against the black background. Bear with me. Here you go. So Facebook alone, 8 billion video views a day from the 500 million active users it gets a day. Snapchat, which frankly I don't quite understand, but that's an age thing, is getting 6 billion video views a day. Just crazy. So, you're all sitting here, presumably because of these numbers, someone's gone, make social work for me, so that's what we're going to try and do, I hope. Before we get into my 7-step program for social media success, trademark Ed Butcher, if you've never seen this before, please go and visit it. There's a website called conversationprism.com, and there's a guy called Brian Solis who keeps this updated. It's a matrix of all the social media platforms and sites that are out there, broken down in a really nice way to talk about, or so that you can work out what you might want to use them for. Because I think probably everybody by default, when you say social media, immediately goes, oh God, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and that's it. And you might then go, oh, I suppose WhatsApp and Snapchat, and a few others. But actually, there are thousands of platforms which are socially integrated or are social platforms in their own right and have their own uses. So Eventbrite, I would call a social media platform because it's got so many social features built in. And what this Conversation Prism does is it very nicely segments everything into different areas. I won't dig into it in great detail, but if you have got a business requirement and you think that social is right for you, have a look at this, and I think you'll find some good ideas. In the middle of it, interestingly, there's a little cycle that it goes listening, learning, adapting, and I'm going to come back to just a little cycle of behaviour later on, which I think is quite useful. So just bear in mind, you should not be restricting yourselves to what you consider to be the big platforms, irrespective of the numbers I just told you about, because they might not be right for you. So with that said, my seven steps to SM success, you will spot the cunning ones that there are actually 8 footprints on the beach, and don't think I've chosen the wrong picture. It took me ages to find 8 footprints, and you'll see why. So big deal here, right? Massive numbers, 27% of the world's population on mobile, on social, so it should be really easy for us to make social media work for our businesses, yes? Or no? Yes. Wrong. It's a no. The problem here, right, is the bombarding that a normal person gets from social media, right? Just everybody sharing every last bloody aspect of their lives. I'm one of the worst oversharers I know, right? My journey to the station this morning, and I counted this, by the time I got to the station, I had 15 notifications from mates who were wearing Fitbits, Garmins. There were a load of Strava updates because I didn't cycle to work today, so everyone's going, I got your segment. There was Map My Cat, Walk My Dog, Hoover My Budgie. I've made some of these apps up, by the way. Just blowing through. I then sit on the train trying to get through this, go interesting, interesting, boring, boring, and then I've got to share my opinion of South West Trains' shoddy service. Thank God I'm not on Southern, otherwise I'll never be off social media, right? And amongst that behaviour, we've got businesses who are trying to get their messages through to me. They're trying to achieve cut-through. Well, how the hell can they? Because I'm much more interested in, next door neighbours map my cat activity than anything else. And the problem is here, right, unless a business's content is really good, or they've got an audience who's really engaged with them, the chances of your message being seen are 1 in 10, tops, okay? So that's a publicly known figure. Facebook and Twitter go, yeah, the likelihood of something being seen in your timeline is 10%. They will improve that if the audiences start to engage with someone, but the reason they restrict it is because they want you to pay to play. Okay, that's how they offer a free platform to the rest of the world, to us mere mortals, and also through selling all your behavioural data as well, so you can get adverts retargeted to you, yada yada yada. So I'm going to show you the 7 things which we do, which help us frame our activity and give us some success and get lots of people, lovely people like you, to come to our lovely event like this. And it's not rules, but it's just what we do. So, step 1 is build a blueprint for your activity. Even if you are already doing something social, if you don't have a plan, you need to write one down. So the blueprint needs to be answering these 5 questions, and I use these for any marketing activity anyway. It's the who, what, why, where, and when. So you can think of lots of questions. Who are your audience, or who are my audience? What are they doing? What are my goals? So are your goals to get registrations for an event? Are they actually physical ticket sales? Do you just want awareness of something that might be happening? Are you trying to promote an idea? Do you want feedback? Could be anything. You want to get this written out. For the audience you defined, you want to go, okay, when are they active? How do they behave? And where are they? And not just where are they, which platform are they using, but physically where are they as well? Because you will find geographical differences in social media behaviour. It's quite fascinating. In the UK, most people behave the same. If you're playing in the UK and Republic of Ireland, you will find that some very old social media sites are still being used. It's quite surprising what's going on. If you are working into Europe, you will find that in Germany, for example, there's a completely different mindset to social media use, time of day, frequency, and so on. You have to have, in my opinion, this plan clear in your head. If you have not done any social media activity before, and all this activity leads you to believe that your audience are WhatsApping Snapchatters, I would suggest that you've got a real uphill battle on your hands, because dealing with those 2 particular platforms, or dark social as we like to call them, can be quite difficult, because you're really getting into a one-to-one relationship with people, and getting good content created is more difficult. Okay, so define. If you're struggling with how to define, then you can always use this little thing. There are 4 things which social has to do for you, or should be doing. Okay, that cycle which I showed you on the conversation prism, not dissimilar to this. You can use social to recruit people into your audiences. Once they're recruited, you need to ensure that you're engaging with them. Yeah, there's no point in them suddenly coming in and then suddenly unsubscribing very quickly, because that sends bad signals back to the networks, and your share of voice will decrease quite rapidly. You need to retain them, and that's just part of making sure that your tone of voice is correct, that you're posting at the right frequency, and so on. The best thing you can do is to turn them into advocates for you. Okay, so advocacy could just be that they are sharing your content, just passively going, I like that, I love this post, a retweet, a share is great. But brilliant advocacy is them actually actively forwarding some kind of social post onto their friend or their colleague, or a group of them going, hey, I've seen this, you should do that. And obviously each stage you're dealing with slightly lower percentages, but as long as you focus in the middle at audience growth, you're not going to be going far wrong. So that was step 1. Step 2, right, this is detective work. This is how to find your audience. Okay? If you've already got an audience, and I see this happening quite a lot, you might go, well, I've got an audience, I don't need to worry about growing it. And it's kind of a little bit of an odd attitude, really, because unless you're very lucky, there will always be people who will become interested in your services and your product or your event, and there are always going to be people who are no longer relevant or have got bored, or what have you. So, finding your audience, there are loads of tools out there that will help you do this. I'm going to name a few, but there'll be more out there. Followupwonk.com is a good tool that will allow you to have a look at anyone's Twitter following and find out what kind of person they're like, and you can compare the audiences. Twitter has got a product or an area called Similar To, which is interesting. There's another site called Clout. Just a quick Google will help you find these tools very, very quickly. One of the things I see people failing to do a lot is helping people to find your social content, which always bugs me. You know, they are creating good content, they're putting it out there, but they're not letting people find them. So you need to be thinking about signposting, and that's everything as blunt as making sure that if you've got a website, you've got follow us on Facebook, like our tweets, Instagram, all those little logos across the bottom, any emails that go out, have a nod to your social media, business cards, anything you can think of. The more signaling, signposting goes on, the better. When you're posting, now that every platform under the sun supports hashtags, make sure that you're using them in the right places. If there's something which is trending and it is relevant to what you're talking about, we'll use that hashtag because it will help get you discovered. It might only be a fraction of 1% of the people who are looking at the whole hashtag thing see your content, but it's a fraction of 1% of people who would otherwise not have seen it, and you're able to piggyback on other people's activity. You do have to be careful that you don't do anything crass and piggyback on the wrong thing. So you will all have seen examples of social media fails where after some god-awful hurricane in America, someone's gone, don't worry about Hurricane Diane, you can come and buy a fat pizza here for 10% off today. Don't do that, it's horrible. Choose your moment and do it right, and that'll be fine. If you've got a website, and I guess most of you have, what you should also be doing is get your developers, your tech team to embed as much social tracking code into that site as possible. So it's a great thing you can do, sorry, need a sip. Great thing you can do is you can create what are called custom audiences in Facebook and Twitter and a couple of the other platforms. So basically what happens if someone hits your website, little cookie gets lodged with them, and if Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is recognizes that person, it sticks them into a database which you can then use when it hits a certain limit, which is fantastic. So you can create audiences which you can then boost or advertise to, and it's wonderful. You know that these people are engaged, you know that they've hit your site at some point, and at more advanced levels you can say, well, someone's not even just hit my homepage and bounced out, who you wouldn't want to talk to again, but they've transacted through. So you might put it on a ticket purchase page or just on specific pages within the site. And then what you need to do is to find your influencers as well. In any industry, there will be people who have an influential voice or are followed a lot. Find those people and put a lot of effort into talking to them one-on-one. If you remember on that little circle, I had advocacy. Get some of these guys to advocate for you, to talk about you. It might just be you sending them a personal message, DM, going, look, I've created this event's happening, what do you think about it? Get some banter going and see if they'll repost, retweet. All the things which you see done quite crassly, think of the number of times on Twitter you will have seen someone, please retweet this for a charity. That's the top level, the bluntest level of doing it. It works. If you get more sophisticated, you'll get better results. Finally, this is one of my many rules, do not buy followers. You will be approached or have been approached by people saying, we can get you 10 million followers on Instagram or whatever. Do not do it. You will find that you are going to get punished by the networks very, very quickly. Recently, Twitter audiences for quite a lot of big brands took a tumble because Twitter went, those are non-active accounts, so they got killed. So yeah, you do have to be very careful. Step 3. This might seem obvious. Social media, part of any social interaction, obviously, is not me just talking, as I am now, and not letting you get a word in edgeways, but it will be listening later to your questions. You need to listen in social media. So all the time, alongside the activity you're doing, you need to be monitoring your audience, basically, seeing what they're talking about, the tone of voices, what are they interested in. If you see any questions, not even directed at you, but you see any questions which you have an opinion on, answer them, respond to them in the right tone of voice. Always think that you don't talk as a business, you talk as a human, because that's the way we interact, and you choose the time of day and you do it quickly, whatever. The idea is to become, this should be in quotes, you want to become a trusted friend. A business which, when it pops up in their feed, isn't something that someone skips past because they go, oh God, it's commercial. Yeah, you want to be really. It's a very personal. It's a visceral thing. When I used to do DM many years ago, when I was sending pieces of paper out, and the first response to any brief was, if I was receiving this marketing approach, the question I ask is, what's in it for me? And that's what social's about. Yeah. If you as a business are talking to you or you or you or you are immediately going to be going, why should I bother looking at this? That's it. There has to be something in it for you. Now that, for you, might not be personal gratification, but it might be that your job gets done better and therefore you get promoted and you earn more money and you eventually become president of the world, but that's something in it for you. So the message here, another rule N+1 if anyone's counting, on social media you do not broadcast. You have to listen for feedback as well, okay? Right, part 4, this is where it gets interesting, this is where you create some content. So, it's a bit tricky here. There needs to be some natural, native, organic content going on the whole time. So, tweets, this is what we're doing today, this is what's happening, this is what's coming up. But from your targets, which you defined in step 1, you should be able to see that some of the things you want to do have a very clear way, a clear medium that you can create content in. So the basic options here are going to be writing some content, so use words. Other things might be pictures, so you can create a nice infographic. You could use a meme generator to create something, or the video I talked about earlier, quickly put some video together. Very easy to do all this. More advanced things you might want to do would be to hire an animator. You can do that online for pennies these days. Get a nice animation scribbled out. Create a quiz using Survey, Gizmo, any of the tools you find there, games and so on. What you're looking for in any of the content is 2 words. It's got to be engaging and it has to be shareable. Okay? It's in a feed, will this make someone stop and click? And if you can get someone to stop and click, that's an engagement, and that 10% number will start to grow organically without you having to give Mark Zuckerberg any of your boss's hard-earned pennies. Obviously, he earned the pennies on the sweat of your brow. This isn't a party political thing, but bear that in mind. So, you've created your content. Now we get on to this. I was a little bit confused about whether I should show you this or not. A lot of it, I said earlier, you have to be careful. If you're going to piggyback on something, make sure you don't do it in a crass way. We saw this, I think it was yesterday. Ella, who's our social media manager, saw this, and it's a lovely example of how Marriott hotels have very cleverly and I think quite morally capitalised on a very interesting news piece. So you will remember that a couple of years ago, a plane crashed in the Hudson River. Luckily it was an Airbus and they appeared to float and no one was hurt, and that was wonderful. What Marriott have done is they put together this great video about what happened to the survivors, and they put them up in a hotel. That's the thing. They ended up at Marriott. But this is great because it's not actually going, there is a special offer this weekend at Marriott, 2 nights for the price of 3 or whatever it might be. But here you go, this is us, this is Marriott, and we've done this thing. And it's a great engaging story. It's a very nice piece of video. Quite expensive to have done, I guess. I've been saying how cheap it is, but still, it can be done. And I just think this is great. This is a brilliant example of how to create content. Also, just a little aside, you'll see that Marriott this is a screen grab from Twitter, have used a Snapchat-like avatar, which is a very subtle way to signpost that they're on another social network as well, which I thought was quite clever. It's not very on brand, well, it's not on brand for them at all. I'm surprised their social team got away with it, but I like that, and it's a trick that we might steal. It's done. Consider it done. Right. Number 5. I'm going to head back in. Right, so I've created my content. I've done my wonderful video about how the people who landed on the river came to love me. Right, this might be an obvious thing, but loads of people keep missing it. You have to share your content. And I'm making a very small difference here between sharing and posting. 90% of us post our content. We create it and we go, right, it's out there. I've done it. But you need to share it. You need to actually encourage the sharing, the spread of it amongst people. There are 2 routes to do this. There is the organic route. Okay, so that is asking people in your audience, your influencers, to retweet, to repost, to share, and to comment. So actually actively going to them saying, I put this up, what do you think? I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember an old advert for the post office, which was where someone sent someone a postcard, and on the back of it said, "I saw this and thought of you." Oh, it was really nice. Social is really just, you can do that again and again and again. You can push stuff out to people. Obviously, it's the paid route as well, which is when Zuckerberg starts earning more money. When you're advertising, you're boosting your posts and promoting them. You have to get this straight in your head. You really must make the difference between sharing and posting. Because at some point, hopefully, you'll be so successful that you've got a lot of volume going on. And you're going to have to both monitor the results of what you're doing, and probably you're going to be struggling to post enough content for you then to share it. So there are two tools, which are the reason for the logos being at the bottom. There are two tools which we would recommend to anybody that they look at. One for posting is Buffer, which is great. It allows you to put messages up and schedule that they are shared to many different networks at certain times of day as well. We're able to do things like monitor what the most successful time of day and day of week is for our audiences, which is very useful. And then Hootsuite is a great tool to help you see what everyone is doing in your social networks as well. For us, it's quite complicated because we've got 3 brands, so therefore we've got 3 times Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and it's quite problematic, and these tools help deal with that. Okay? Right. So I've created, I've shared, now I've got to measure it. Because the assumption, again, I'm just pulling this 90% number out of thin air. Let's make it 80% this time. 80% of people don't change what they're doing because they assume that they're doing enough, they're doing it right. Well, in the real world, we know that's not going to be the case. The 3 questions are, am I doing enough? Am I doing the right thing? Will this have to change again and again and again? And the answers to those probably is always going to be no. Quite often, I do see people oversharing, so am I doing enough? Yeah, way too much. Back off a little bit, that would help. Measurement can be done in several ways. On the big platforms, so again, Facebook, Twitter, and so on, you can get analytics. If you've got a business page on any of those, you will have some analytics which will tell you how often your content is being shared. You might be looking at some demographic data. That's all wonderful. What you're looking for in here, however, is not just big numbers of so many people following you, but also for engagement rates, for click-throughs, if that's what you're looking for. And on videos, you need to be looking at how long, how much of a video has someone watched. We got caught out. We create, or have created, quite a lot of video in the past. What we'd missed initially, we were, isn't it wonderful? 6,000 people watched our video. And then we went into the analytics and went, 6,000 people started watching our video, 400 finished watching it. 25 seconds into it, they got really bored. I wonder why that was, and we discovered it was the length of the video and the tone of voice that we were using. We would have carried on for ages creating video that no one wanted to watch had we not dived or dove, whichever, into that. Hopefully, all your social activity will have a destination, so a website, registration page or something like that. You need to make sure that that is, has analytics plugged in. By default, most people, I guess, are using Google Analytics. You should become an expert in using Google Analytics. It's got a really nice area to measure traffic from social. If you integrate that with e-commerce activity, you can start putting an ROI measurement against your social activity. If you are trying to drive ticket sales or registrations to a phone number, brief your team. Go, right, when someone rings up, make sure you ask the question, where did you hear about us, so you know if your social activity is working. You can even measure what people think about you in social. So there are sentiment monitoring tools. One of the biggest, and I guess therefore the most expensive, is from Salesforce. It used to be called Radian 6. But that's great. You can point that at the social world, configure it in such a way that you can look for your brand and go, are people talking positively about us or negatively? And then you can choose how you deal with that. That can be, it's a very advanced thing to do, but it can be really, really, really good. The important thing is that this measurement is nearly the final step in the process. It is telling you if you are doing the right thing. Because guess what? Step 7 is go back to step 1. You've got to rinse and repeat because you are never, ever going to have got it as right as you could have done. You need to be going, are there any new platforms? Are there any different platforms? did in step one? Did I get my audience right? Was my tone of voice right? Is the type of content right? Did I find the right influencers? You might be really lucky. You might have some super chef who's tweeted for you many, many times. That looks great. But if you've had no one turn up to your event or no one buy your album or whatever, sorry, wasn't worth it. Forget about it. So don't rest on your laurels on that one. You have to go back. Obviously, no need to panic. Okay, it's just part of that grand circle of life, my little rotatey things that go on. So, 13 minutes in, aware of the fact you're all hungry. So, the 8th footstep on the beach was this thing. A lot of people come to me after these things and go, oh God, what happens if I get it wrong? What happens, do I have to worry? What about the damage to my brand? The great thing about social is how ephemeral it is. It can do a lot of benefit very, very quickly. It could do a lot of harm, but most of the time, if you make a mistake on social, it's just going to fly by. Again, because unless you're very good, only 10% of people are going to see your mistake in the first place, yeah? So don't fret about not getting your spelling right. Although you should be a little careful, I feel. If you're a BBC journalist working on a training exercise, you get your facts and your spelling right, and you make sure you don't tell the English-speaking world that the Queen Elizabeth, whoever she is dead. That was quite a bad one from last year. I mean, she's still working at the BBC, which is quite impressive. I thought she'd have been airbrushed out of history. And finally, if you're going to troll someone, which obviously we wouldn't be doing, it's quite important that you choose your target carefully, right? I'm a big fan of James Blunt, the person, not the music. I'll get that out there straight away. Someone called him out on the Invictus Games on Twitter. So, apologies for the swearing. So, who invited James Blunt to the Invictus Games? Asked Dino Laws. He replies, Prince Harry, full stop, by text, full stop, boom. Right? If you can get one of your social posts in your entire lives as good as one of James Blunt, you have won my 7-step challenge, basically. That's it. So, I raced through that. Tweet how much you've enjoyed it, how wonderful at Skinny Punter, at Squaremeal is. Hashtag it, and we'll ride the wave of that one. Does anyone have any questions for me, or do you all want to shuffle off? Please, ask away.
I've got
12 questions?
I've got 2 questions.
Okay.
One of them is like a personal one and one that might help everyone. Start with the personal one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I run 2 independent companies. One is a children's entertainment company called Captain Fantastic.
Yeah.
We've always been like pretty high on Google, etc.
Actually, is there a microphone at the back that we can have?
I can speak loudly.
No, you keep going, but because we'll be able to pass the mic around. Keep going. So,
like jumping on things, there's obviously a film now out called Captain Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's pushed us to page 3 on Google for everything. So we're now upped our pay-per-click, etc. But is there a way of actually getting job?
Hello. Is there an actual way of getting, kind of jumping on the bandwagon of Captain Fantastic, the film, for who we are? Because I mean, we own the patent and stuff, but like, it's not competitive with us.
Sure.
Film,
what I do is look on Twitter will be the big platform for it. If Captain Fantastic is being hashtagged, which I'd be amazed if it wasn't,
it is, yeah.
Use that in your posts, and then this is basically a question about SEO, so search engine optimization.
Yeah.
So social is quite a big thing for effective SEO because lots of social shares create what are called social signals. I get geeky at this point, sorry, which will help your ranking. You've got a specific problem because someone who's much bigger than you is using your brand. So I would say that what you need to do is look really carefully at your hashtagging techniques and just ride through the pain because the film will be quite ephemeral. It will only be big for a while. Okay. Yeah. And then see what you can do, use social to drive people through to you. But yeah, that is a challenge, and paid search is your only way out in the short term. So that was question one.
Yeah, sorry. And the second one is you said about getting people to at the end of all your emails, getting people to like things or share things. We always send out review surveys, etc. But whenever I get an email saying you bought something on Amazon, would you survey us? Delete. Would you share this? Delete. Would you like this? Delete. I don't even bother, even if I've had a great time with them, really. But like, is there a way?
Lovely man.
I mean, great time.
Sorry.
Yes. Is there an actual way of we always like you get something for free, or like you said, I'm not really going to do anything unless I'm getting like a free lunch at Squaremeal to actually come along.
I have. It's a good question actually. So we've looked at some of the big review websites, so Review, Trustpilot and stuff like that. I've asked them this question, and they say that actually the completion rates are very, very high when it's a trusted platform asking them for the feedback. But what they recommend for people who don't use them, bizarrely, is incentivise. So as you say, I think you just suggested, you can say, give us some feedback and
we'll 5% off something.
Yeah, either a set discount or come up with a prize and do a free prize draw off the back of it, and that will amazingly change a lot of people's perception. But my experience of doing all these feedback questionnaires over the years is if I've got a 10% return, I've been like, my God, it was the most successful thing I've ever done. Asking someone for their opinion on you, as you said, it's a boring thing, unless they've either massively loved it or hated it, which is TripAdvisor's business model. It's like love us or kill us. That's the only two things that they do, basically.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Oh, behind you, microphone travelling back.
Hi, thank you. I run social media for Gordon Ramsay Group, and with social media becoming more and more instant, we have people sitting in the restaurant tweeting complaints, not very often, but it happens, and then they expect a response straight away. So how do you manage those expectations? Because obviously you can't always be on Twitter, you can't always be responding to these people.
It is really, really difficult, and I've seen again and again and again people complain and then complaining late on a Saturday night.
And then they forget about it, and then we have to deal with it.
Well, yeah, or first thing on Sunday morning going, I complained about this last night and you haven't responded. All you can really do is when you do respond is to go, sorry for the delay, it was the weekend, or we were asleep, or whatever. It is tricky. I have seen some software set up, I don't think it was Radian 6, but something similar, which the sentiment monitoring was so clever that it basically auto-responded and went, we're all asleep, but we will deal with this tomorrow. I don't know if Gordon's pockets are deep enough to do that, but that's the way. It is really, really challenging. But it's a good thing actually on customer service, on complaints, the most critical thing. So Ed's rule N+1 again. I don't know where we're at, several hundred by now, is actually do respond publicly. This is a thing I quite often have seen people taking the complaints offline, which isn't great, really. You need to prove that you've resolved it. I think the bigger the business you are, the more important that is. So I mean, I've just finished a tussle with Pizza Hut about having taken 45 minutes to serve me a really not very good meal, which was interesting. And they did that very publicly. And that was an interesting thing. I think they did it very well, but still never going back.
Thank you.
Dreadful. Any more? I'll keep. We're just what we'll do, right? Anyone at the back who puts their hand up, it will get to you. So, two rows back on your left. There we go.
Yeah, just a quick question. The 7 stages of the process that you discussed.
Yeah.
How often would you go back to stage 1 again?
In our office, pretty much every stage gets questioned every day, just because not only does everyone have an opinion, but they feel they're entitled to it. It depends on the size of your business, frankly. Okay. I would formalise it for us, definitely every quarter. I put some thought into it, but there is a constant conversation going on between different people. So we've got 2 separate marketing teams, one for this brand and one for Imbibe. So we will have conversations about what is appropriate for them. As a result of this big event, over the next month, there'll be a big wash-up. So we analyse everything, and we look at last year's analysis, and we go, right, this is what changed, this is what worked or didn't work. That will influence this event next year, but we have another show for Imbibe, which is in June, and it will also influence that a little bit. So it's not on the 31st of every month you must do this. Yeah. But it's just literally a cycle which I've embedded, and I go through it, and I've used it in a previous life at an agency for clients as well. I've said, in your internal marketing meetings, use this. You might choose to skip things. Some people go, I can't take on any more platforms. We're going to do Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That's it. Not going to countenance anything else. Fine, that's their choice. But as long as they're looping through it, I think it's a good place to be. Okay. Yeah. Any more? Oh, right at the back. Pass the microphone back. It's like some Olympic event here. Don't drop it, you get disqualified.
Hi, so my question is about Instagram.
Yep.
Is there a way when you put content up, a great picture, of tracking who has taken your picture and reused it elsewhere without acknowledging that it was your image?
Yes. as long as I've used it outside Instagram, you can drag that picture into Google image search and it will find it.
Right, but nothing within Instagram then?
Not that I'm aware of, no. But yeah, you can usually track the pictures down. I have great fun doing that.
Thank you.
Seeing where anything else is. Any more, or shall I release you onto your lunchtime duties? That's it, we're done. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I've got a week, thank you. I've never had a week.